There we go.
Hey, welcome to the April edition of our Philly MacAdmins gathering. Before we get started, let's all give a round of applause to Ben, who is our camera operator. It's his birthday today.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, we'll just start off with what's new. As we usually do, we have quite a bit to cover this month. So we'll talk about the new update to macOS Mojave, and also the associated iOS, tvOS, and watchOS updates. We'll talk about what's new with Office 2019 and 365. We'll go through a security roundup, and there's been quite a bit to go through for that. We'll have our items of interest, and we'll wrap it up with just the conferences. And at the end, if we have time, we'll have the discussion as always. First up, macOS Mojave updates. While we were away, 10.14.4 was released on 325. This is the where Apple News Plus debuts. But this fixes the root pipe reborn issue, which we'll talk about in the security roundup. Basically, it's if you guys remember root pipe, this is just as bad. Although it affects, from what my understanding is, it affects machine backups. But essentially, yeah. So this one exploit is probably incentive enough to update immediately. So also there's a couple of issues that it fixed. Prevented an issue that prevents mobile accounts from logging in from off-network Mac after changing their network account password. People with mobile accounts probably experienced that. Also fixes some issues that intermittently prevented apps from downloading from the App Store or installing by MDM. So the security updates, there were 44 CVEs closed in this update, affecting 35 different processes. So this was a pretty hefty bug fix update. And there was an additional supplemental security update released for High Sierra and Sierra. There weren't any CVEs associated with it, but there was enough changes that it read the build number for both of those. So those are also offered if you update those that still need to get those updated. So moving along to iOS. 12.12 was released on the same day, 325. That was also, I think, the day of their big spring announcement of things. Again, Apple News Plus. This update includes improvements to Siri AirPlay, Apple Play, Screen Time, Safari, Apple Music, and the AirPods. Fixed an issue that prevented some missed calls from appearing in the notification center, which was pretty annoying, actually. And there's other fixes and improvements that are detailed in the link associated with it. There's quite a bit, but nothing specifically enterprise focused. So, and this one, iOS had more CVEs. They had 54 CVEs closed in this update, affecting fewer processes. Quite a bit.
I'm going to ask you one question. CVE, yes.
That's CVEs are security exploits. I forget what the actual term CVE stands for, but essentially it's the published security exploit. And the vendors use those. Like independent researchers will go to vendors and say, I found this exploit, they'll get a CVE, and then when the vendor fixes it, they'll reference that CVE.
Today I learned CVE is common vulnerabilities and exposures.
Oh.
Today I learned as well.
Oh.
There you go. Moving along to tvOS and watchOS. tvOS 12.2 released same day as everything else, and then immediately followed by 12.2.1 a couple weeks ago. So there was lots of security updates in 12.2, but there were no published CVEs for 12.2.1 that we are aware of, because sometimes Apple will go back and update the security updates with an additional disclosure of CVEs once the time period is passed if they patch them. So, but hardly anybody goes back and looks at those, except for maybe Ted Pine. I think that's his job. So also at this at the event, the spring event, Apple talked about the new Apple TV app that will be coming next month. It does a bunch of things a little bit better than I think the current Apple TV app, and I think it also seeds the ground for their coming Apple TV Plus streaming service, which will happen in the fall, because everybody has to have a streaming service now, and because everybody wants to make money on TV. Moving along to watchOS, 5.2 was released on the same day as everything else. And security details are listed there. Most of the same CVEs that were closed in iOS were closed in watchOS. So, but nothing that really jumped out at me. Of course, I'm not a huge watchOS user either. So, if there's anything that you guys notice, let me know. Moving on to Office. So while we were away, 1623 was released on March 12th, and 1624 was released earlier this week on the 16th. The big thing obviously coming is that it's the new app icons in Office. So everything looks different. I think the jury's still out on whether people like the new version of the icons or not. But apparently they're doing a whole rebranding of Office that this is just a part of. Skypes and Teams and a few other things have new app icons coming. At least I've seen them.
Mhm.
They're supposed to have a general Office icon that's supposed to be coming in a couple of months, because apparently designing icons is hard. So making sure everything looks right at different sizes.
Let's be honest. The icons are literally just different colors with different letters.
Only so much you can do. Right? Like, what did
Office 2016 got iterated again. It's now twice. So we're now at 16, 16, and 19. I did look, and there was some security updates patched, some CVEs patched in the 16, 16, 8 update. But nothing jumped out at me after 16, 16, 9. But as always, we still have a little over a year left before 2016 is end of life. So, and as always, the minimum requirement now for Office is 10.12. The auto update for 10 was also released. The big new feature for this is that it will install Google Chrome for qualifying devices. So essentially anything that I think, nobody said for certain, but I think what this means is that you have a Mac that's running on an APFS and probably on a SSD. It will clone the app, make a clone of the app in a separate space. And when you close the app, it basically replaces it from the clone at that point. So the next time you launch it, it's actually on a new version. So it doesn't actually, so when you update the app, you won't get prompted to actually close it and relaunch it. So you can continue to work, and then when you naturally close it, it will be updated. I'm not sure how that will work with people who never actually close or shut down.
What is this closing of Apple speak of?
But hopefully we'll get some more details from the Microsoft folks about how this is supposed to work. But that's a big thing coming. I think this also works sort of more like the click-to-run stuff on the Windows side. So I think that's probably the direction they want to take things. So security roundup. There's lots of things to talk about. I have 2 slides. So the big one I think is the Wipro network. So Wipro is, if you don't know, they're one of the largest sort of outsourcing firms you hire a white pro to bring in contractors for specific, to have them do specific things. And their network was breached. And according to details, both of which these links go to creds on security, it's essentially their network was used as a sort of a launching pad to attack their clients' networks. So this is kind of a big deal, and they have not been handling it well. If you read on the follow-up to it, so it's basically the old story of deny, 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 and then downplay. But it's a big deal because they like programs with a lot of large companies.
The clients that hit.
I don't remember if they state how many in the article, but I don't think they actually say how many, but there's been a few. Like the person who reached out to Brian was one of the clients and basically told Wipro, we've been breached and this is how. And these are the indicators of the compromise. And also shared that with Brian. And yeah, they have to handle it pretty well. So, but it's a big deal.
Were those breaches nearshore or offshore?
I think they were offshore. I think it happened in India.
Yeah.
So, and then going from India to
Yeah.
connecting back to terrestrial onshore networks.
That's bad.
So Repipe Reborn. The link goes to Objective by the Sea guest article from Van. We'll handle it right out of there. But yeah, essentially, this is fixed in 10.14.4, but this is a serious exploit that I think, again, goes through Time Machine. And I read this earlier, and then most of the details went out of my head. But it's, it's a pretty serious thing, so you definitely want to make sure you update your on Mojave if you're up on 10.14.4. And anything else. I don't think I didn't double check, but I don't think this also got put back to ICL or Sierra. So if you have clients running those, they're also open to this exploit. So, moving on to the next network breach. Citrix network was also breached. I think when I was reading that, it initially appeared to be a low-level breach, not a lot of people affected. It's apparently this was sort of like some users got phished, and apparently the people inside the network were just looking for something to just grab and then sell, rather as opposed to sitting in the network a long time and just sort of like basically accumulating data and doing more malicious things. So they may have gotten off that easy, a little easy, but the article goes through the whole details, if I'm remembering that correctly. Also, there is a new Mac pen testing blog that's been put up. This is notable because I think there was some back and forth about the logo that they initially used. So, which even though it's a Creative Commons license for that particular Apple image with the worm in it, it's been associated with someone else for years. So there was some consternation around the logo they initially chose. But essentially, it's the same thing. Pen testing. It's I was looking at it. It seems to be sort of like join the team and we all work together kind of thing. So the details are there. But yes, more pen testing on Mac can only be a good thing, even though if it, at least in the long term, to make the platform more secure. So it's another month, another Facebook issue. So yes, Facebook has been improperly storing passwords in plain text, if you can believe it.
And their Instagram users, they just announced that today.
That's what the asterisk is for, because I just found out that also Instagram had the same thing. I mean, the Facebook one was bad, but that was like, thousands. The Instagram one apparently pushed that up to millions.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Another reason why Facebook is terrible. Except for the people we know who work at Facebook, they're awesome.
Hey, Facebook, you want to come and talk?
So, also, Virus Total will now analyze Mac malware if you send them samples. They will do it in a sandbox. So, again, another good thing for Mac OS security. So, we all have same baselines to work on. On the good news front, Microsoft announced Defender ATP for Mac. So ATP stands for Advanced Threat Protection. So it's kind of like the next-gen security software where they analyze data, coming in and going out, and trying to detect signatures and all that things. Like CB Defense or any of the Carbon Black stuff or any of that. Those types of things. This is Microsoft's version. Of course, for the Windows side, it integrates with everything Windows, so it works a lot better. And they're bringing it to the Mac side. I know this is something we're sort of looking at, but I don't think the security says it's not quite ready for prime time for the Mac. But the announcement actually indicates it's available in beta right now. If you're interested in that, you can contact your Microsoft reps to get on board with beta and see what that can do for you. So another big thing, so Homeland Security took the step of actually warning of flaws in most enterprise VPN apps with the way the user tokens are stored. So when we say enterprise VPN apps, we're talking specifically Cisco, F5, Pulse Secure, like all the big names. Palo Alto, yes. So all the big names who do VPN, they're all subject to this flaw. I think Palo Alto is the only one who's come out and said we're going to patch this.
They did. I'm running it right now.
Okay, so it's being patched currently. F5 has said to their customer, according to the article, F5 has said that you should be using multi-factor authentication and using F5. And so as the mitigation to this, but haven't given an indication they're going to patch this. And the others haven't responded yet. So, so yeah, so I think this is like a fundamental flaw with the way these VPN apps work, or maybe even actually the VPN protocol. I wasn't entirely sure of that. So yeah, so that's kind of a big deal. And other news, another bad news.
Oh my God.
So there's been a lot of like for the last couple of months, there's been a bunch of domain hijackings, and nobody knows, and they still haven't been able to pinpoint exactly who or why yet. But yeah, and because it's not directly affecting the United States, I don't think there's been a lot of attention to it. Like most of the things have been happening in places like Syria or Ukraine. So you can draw your own conclusions on that. So, but that's what's been happening since we were last together on the security side. Moving on to items of interest for all of you. Jamf Pro released the 10.11. The big news is that they now have official support for 10.14.4 and iOS 12, especially the new profile payloads that come with these updates. For macOS 10.14.4, that is the remote desktop stuff, and for iOS, like, just had it one right on. But yes, all the new profiles that come with the new versions. So that's officially supported in 10.11. Monkey had a giant release, 3.6. MSC and Monkey status, where we're completely rewritten in Swift, which means that now If you're running 360, your minimum supported OS for your Mac fleet is now just 10.10. And that's because of the Swift runtime libraries. So, and since then, also 3.6.1 was also released, and the change log is linked there as well. So, for those of you who are still Code 42 customers, Crash Plan has made some changes to add min exclusions, which I think is coming at the end of this month. The article details exactly what those are and how they work. But that's going to affect probably how you guys store backups and what you can access after.
And what gets certain paths and file types are now going to be blocked, period, no matter what you do.
Right. So,
No more full disk backup, huh?
and because Mac deploy stick has been a big thing recently, everyone's talking about that. We're keeping it up in here, and Tim has iterated it to 1.5, and I know 1.6 is probably coming any day now. So because he's been iterating very quickly on that.
Anybody here using MDS, Mac deploy stick?
Not beyond the POC yet.
Okay. Trying to figure out if it's worth it.
And last thing, at least on this, is Oracle is no longer making their Java SC JDKs or the runtimes publicly available for download. You can, if you have an Oracle account, still download for testing or personal purposes. But you basically have to pay for a license to be able to deploy it to like an entire fleet or whatever. There are, before we came here, Rich said we had auto package recipes for Amazon's version of OpenJDK. So if you want to start using that, OpenJDK can be used. I don't know if there is a Mac specific version for the OpenJDK. I'm sure there is, but I haven't seen it. Or you could just stop pushing JDK to your fleet, Java to your fleet altogether. Yeah. And I don't know. I know it's not practical for everybody because there's still a lot of software, especially in the education space, that uses a lot of Java. So, also, SAP requires a lot of Java. So if you have SAP, you're probably going to need to do something. Especially if your SAP team is like a lot of other people's SAP teams, and it's like a year or two behind where SAP actually is. So,
Did Java give or Oracle give a reason why?
why?
Yeah.
They want to make more money. I mean, I don't know if they said that specifically. But
Got
that's
it.
the real
Read. Understood. They're an American company.
They can't make a subscription.
Make a subscription of Java.
Because you can't install it.
The last item of interest, I had to break out into its own slide because it's of enough importance that it needs to be talked about separately. This is the idea of app notarization, which you may have been hearing about recently. So this was announced at the last WWDC in their session about what's coming new for security on Macs. For those of you who don't know, notarization is essentially an extra step beyond signing the app. And basically what it is that if you notarize something, you're uploading it to Apple, and they will basically check it for any either malicious code or any malware that might be inside. And if once they pronounce it clean, they give you a ticket, and you stable that ticket to either your app, your package, or your DMG, or and I think there's one more, and I don't remember what it is. But yeah, and then you can, and then at that point you get, and I don't know if you can see that, you get slightly different text in Gatekeeper where it says, Safari downloaded this file and blah, Apple checked it for malicious software and none has been detected. So it's an extra little thing for Gatekeeper to check. And the idea is obviously to Apple's continuing fight against malware on the OS side. And at the time of the original session, they just basically said it's coming in a future version of the OS. And lots of us assumed that they meant in the next major version of the OS. So, but as of 10.14.5, which is currently in beta, notarization will be enabled. So, in the short term, this affects anybody who includes a kernel extension in their software packages. Essentially, after a specific to be determined date, the kernel extension will have to be notarized in order for it to actually load on the system. So currently the date is like March 11th, but there's been some discussion that the date will move further down, may move to something in like either this month or later, depending on how the beta iterations go. So we don't know if that March 11th date is going to be the final, cutoff.
March 11th.
Yeah.
Next year.
No, this year. So it was back. Yes. So what that means is that any kernel extension that was signed prior to that date is essentially grandfathered in. It doesn't have to be notarized. And then anything after that has to be notarized. But as I said, we're not entirely sure yet whether this date is hard and fast, that's it, or whether they'll move it up or back whenever it actually 10.14.5 actually drops.
Yeah, and then in regards to the kernel extensions, if you don't have a whitelister, if you don't whitelist them, you can't even allow it.
Yes.
So you have to whitelist it until they notarize it, because if you don't,
Right, which is my next point. The UACal whitelist will override the notarization requirement for that, as long as it's in the whitelist.
Yeah, this is helpful security.
So if you don't have a whitelist, then essentially, yeah. So, from an admin standpoint, we are probably all okay with our existing deployments mostly. But specifically the kernel extension notarization requirement is probably going to disproportionately hit the consumer level because there's no whitelist for people for that. So then that'll be sort of like a passive aggressive push against the vendors, because when Apple forces all their customers to complain to the vendors like this kernel extension or this thing isn't working. Why isn't this working?
Semantic's not working. What are you doing? Well, we'll get rid of the text. Good.
So yes, so
Immediately.
also with notarization, the date that we're talking about too also affects actual developers. So if you have been distributing and have been a developer and have a developer account before this cutoff date, you're fine. You don't have to require notarization right away, at least in 10.14.5. But if you are new to development or new to distribution, basically you just got a new developer certificate after this date, then you will be required to notarize everything. So, and I'm sure at some point in the next version of the OS, everything will probably need to be notarized. So there's been a lot of discussion about notarization. So there are links here from everybody from our good friend Tom Bridge in DC, or part of the DC MacAdmins, or DMD MacAdmins, I'm sorry, and Charles Edge, Tim Perfit from Two Canoes has a couple of really in-depth stuff. So this has been on everybody's mind because especially this showed up in beta 2 and now it took everybody by surprise. So now we're all trying to figure it out now, as opposed to like a lot of people who expected it to be something that shows up in the next major version of the OS 10.15, which would give us a couple more months. But yes, Apple is trying to keep us on our toes. So moving on to conferences. So MacAdmins came and went, and the session videos are now available. There was a couple of ones I think I was interested in checking out. There was a couple of good talks in So, WWDC, I don't think, I only know of one person who actually got the lottery, at least around here. So, and that was my boss. So,
Are you going?
no, because my boss is going. I did not win the lottery, so I'm probably not going. Also, really right after WWDC, the two Canadian conferences, Mac Deployment and the Mac DevOps YVL, happen in like rapid succession. So,
Are they both in Canadian?
they're both in Canada. Mac Deployment is in Calgary.
So you can go from one end to the other?
Yes,
That's always the joke.
yes, but I understand it's not a short trip.
No.
Calgary.
Canada's big.
It's like going to, from
Just riding
to New
moose.
York and then throwing a train ride.
So there you go.
That's all.
Yeah, and then maybe another car ride.
Yeah.
So PSU MacAdmins is in July. And I think from what I've been hearing, there's quite a bit of people in this room who will be at the CLB conference this year.
First
So
one.
Philly will be well represented.
I got my boss to pay for it now.
I just want to pay the registration. I'll pay for the cost.
So Max Sysmin announced their dates this year, October 1st and 4th, for those of you who were lucky enough to fly out to Sweden. GF Nation, as we know, is in November this year. The cold of November in Minneapolis.
I think it's a brilliant idea with that.
And Mac Tech announced their event is October 16th and 18th. And this one, and they're in LA, so LA in October is actually kind of nice. And that's pretty much it. So we are now at the open discussion part. If anybody has anything they want to know.
Oh, I was gonna ask, you had mentioned code 42.
Yeah.
So we're about to, when I say about to, we're going to embark on a backup project next summer. And that's pretty, I've been hearing, as far as options go, we've got a demo from them and we
Right.
were really impressed. But I've heard good things about Backblaze as well. I was curious if anybody uses anything else besides code 42 for comparison.
I'm actually about to start a trial for Backblaze for my home network because I had been Code 42 for a while, and this update actually kills a lot of my usage because they're nixing, backing up virtual machine storage and user configuration files, which seems to me profoundly short-sighted. So, which is unfortunate because the latest release of the client had some massive improvements to it. They switched from using, Spotlight to monitor files to using FS events. So, I mean, it was a huge release of system resources. I mean, it's a solid product. Also, depending on which version you go with, either because this is definitely for the small business and cloud only, but whether or not this applies to enterprise is still kind of vague. The documentation was less than clear. So you may want to ask about that one. But from what I understand, Backblaze, especially since they redid some of their business offerings, seems to be about on par with a lot of what CrashPlan has. I haven't had a chance to see their console yet, see how that compares to Code 42.
I haven't looked at it at all, because our backup project is moved back
So-
next summer.
So I know Code 40, if you talk to backup vendors, they will probably all say the same thing versus cloud services. But making the distinction that singing to a cloud service is not necessarily backing up. But I think that it intrudes on their business quite a bit, especially for things like OneDrive, Dropbox, Google Drive. They all have versioning essentially for at least on their enterprise products. So you can do things like, roll back to a specific version, which is, which are, is one of the features that I think Crash Plan and Backlinks and all those have that as well. And one of the things that Code 42 has been doing now is they've kind of been doing this for a while now. They've sort of been rebranding themselves as a security company, then as a strict backup company.
Yep.
And so if you get these, and these are added on services, they have a product for legal discovery, which basically allows your legal team to go through the backups to do discovery, as opposed to actually touching the physical machine or grabbing the physical machine, which is a better experience for everybody involved. And they're also doing doing what's sort of like a passive DLP, in which they have an agent that monitors file events anyway when you have your backup, and they're just basically leveraging that data, sort of like, oh, this thing happened here. They can monitor the machine, do things like, oh, this person had this particular file and put it on a USB drive around here, and then they can send it over that way. So, and I think that's pretty much how they're pushing themselves now, more so than the backup side. Because I think, yes, the writing is on the wall that cloud services will probably negate the need for a true backup. Because, if all your stuff is on OneDrive or Google Drive or something, and something happens to the machine and you have to wipe it, unless you had to keep anything locally, which most people, at least for us, we say no, put everything in OneDrive. So unless we store something locally for whatever reason, then we're probably going to
Just use retrospect.
Yeah, they still around.
Yep.
They are?
Yep.
They haven't been like
Fiber
sued,
channel.
murdered.
They've been bought out several times, but they're still around, and apparently their current offering is supposed to be pretty good.
Bye.
I still have nightmares of
Okay.
retrospect of the early
Stuff
2000s.
I'll never get back.
So we use,
Really?
There's hair I'll never get back.
everybody gets
Remember
100 gigs of
that
space or something like that.
Yeah.
That's not one.
It just would-
is
that was always an
hours,
ordeal.
like,
It's just-
it's encrypted and stuff.
It would just work great for like a week. And then.
If you were
slowly but
lucky.
surely,
To use to put it in the OneDrive.
the back-
And then just fail to report
What
that
do they
it
call it?
failed.
The compact, whatever, what was the terminology they used? When you looked, when they backed up, like, let's say you were doing a weekly, it was like a certain term they used. And I can't think of it. Well, it wasn't a package.
When I say local, server local.
No, it was their own language.
Yeah, they had some weird terminology.
If anyone's going from Jamf on-prem to Jamf Cloud, please talk to me, because it's been a difficult road. It's been a difficult road, particularly trying to navigate through proxies and firewalls, and also to get data into Splunk.
Oh, yeah,
Since
good luck
line
with
of
that.
sight- Since line of sight is now gone, I'll use a webhook to make it sound easy. I don't know how to do it. But a webhook to identify the server and then just run your SQL.
Migration.
But there has been lots of roadblocks. We're still not there. I've had 4 migration calls now, so I'm almost on the record now. I don't think they've ever had more than 5.
Yeah, webhooks can be a little tricky,
Yeah. I see. I've heard.
depending on what you are doing. So for us, when we do the webhook, it goes through Blue Coat for whatever reason. So I don't know why, but it tries to do an authorization and it gets a 401. Well, it gets a 403 and then a 401. And the way I got around that is I have it kicking out to one of our dev servers. I have a PHP script that just basically takes what's given and rebuilds the packet and sends it out to what's it called? Out to Microsoft to do a Microsoft Flow trigger.
Yeah, forget it now. That's too many points right there. I'll figure it out, we'll figure it out. It's only one simple query. It's just file vault enabled or disabled. That's it. It's just one query.
Why don't you do a smart, not a smart group, but could do it. But why don't you just use an advanced computer search?
Well, again, it's a question of, I'm not the one who wants to read the reports every day. And so I'm hoping that person, I can give them an account on the server, just to audit, and they can see the
Well, I
reports
think
every day.
in-
But she might want it in Splunk. Just like I like Splunk, she might want everything in Splunk. That's the case.
I think it's either 10.10 or 10.11 that allows you to email reports now.
Yep, we can email it.
But the computer searches themselves can be grabbed through an API.
Yeah,
So you could just write a script that
I can call, because Splunk is supposed to be a native plugin eventually to Jamf, but right now we have to call the API to do that. So, which was easy on-prem. I mean, it was just, okay, here's the account, here's the query, bang, and it just dumped it right in. But now we don't have line of sight. So,
When you're,
Education.
they are gonna push your back saying it's gonna
I'm
cause
not sure
them,
if you know.
it's gonna
that.
cost them hours, if not weeks of work.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe like a jump box instead, like you have a local server, you
Well-
have a local box that does the API call, and then you point Splunk to the local box.
Still have to figure out that major problem. But I understand what you're saying. We'll see. I mean, we'll work it out. They're just in the brand stage. But if I could just give her access, she could run her own reports.
Yeah, we need to use the backup.
She has 7 or 8 different consoles she's running anyway, so.
You gotta see your problem.
It was very bad a couple of weeks.
Oh, shoot.
Look at that.
We have a domain at
Like
.local.
full folder, right?
You are in serious pain. And if you have Spark cards on top of it,
Oof,
excruciating pain.
nuts to that.
Like, for example, when you try to log in with your card and certificate no longer trusted comes up. I fixed that with a configuration profile smart card with Jamf. It only works on half of the people. The other half doesn't work. Because Apple still theoretically handles smart card enabled and certificates. Then any other third party can handle it from there. But for some reason, the MDM overrides that on machines, and they get in no problem. And it's just a simple thing. It's one per user. I don't have verified trust, so the P list is 0. So I shouldn't even be getting blocked, even if it was untrusted, for some reason it is. It's been great time.
So who cares about that?
This all came up within 10 days. All of it. So domain user can't log in because it's .local. This card thing was 2 days ago. The migration's now a week old and we're still not there. Oh, it's.
Are you in a Splunk user group on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
The
only reason I knew that
I don't know what about
But
it
I'm
other
like,
than
join
just-
it
that
and
issue
put
is
that
occurring.
request out there. I see it, and you're not getting
the
response.
cat,
You block the food
yeah,
chain.
with 10.14.5.
Thing is, this is only, I
Because
mean, DLP is
my
just making
Mac
it huge,
Pro
bigger and
at
bigger and
work,
bigger. I mean,
iMac Pro is
Yeah.
on the
this is
beta,
eventually.
as VMware Fusion, and they just had that sandbox
I think pretty much
exchange.
everybody,
And that one where
everybody
the
outside of
Windows
security.
VM, just by visiting a malicious site, he gets out of the browser sandbox, gets out of the VM
Right,
sandbox.
right, but no, but the
It's able
better
to
option is
execute
actually
root
something like.
all
hopefully
I guess,
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
part of the.
I also
window, I
always
believe.
really going to, but that's coming from.
Just like how they turned the Tesla.
My guess is.
I mean,
going to-
technically,
My guess is that
possible.
3 of the companies.
I don't know anybody who's doing this.
They're never going to do CAX lists.
I've heard stories because
they
you
barely
can
support Mac
do
lists,
Splunk from it,
as is standard for security companies.
so.
But if they notarize
But
it, then
I think the
we
back
find
end
out.
would have
Yeah.
to be
If they
massive,
notarize it, we'll need,
depending on how big your.
I mean, even my simple query, which
you
grabs
still will need
everything,
to allow
it's
it
only one
though.
query. I
Right.
forget it.
But yeah,
So what
I can't
is
imagine.
needed with.
It would end quick.
If you wanted to do it automatically.
You know.
As I
Yeah,
said,
if you want it to be automatic, I
I
mean,
the amount of data I
I've
get
heard
from
stories about people doing.
Yeah.
5 alt-enabled disabled, the amount of data I get just from that is ridiculous.
Probably necessary to keep it.
It was driving me
Absolutely.
nuts.
Yeah, it's like-
I was like looking at all
For the
the,
F.
I was looking at the
Queries
CAD
everything.
government install, I was looking at what was there,
Query just
and I'm
grabbing
like,
the
okay,
entire
everything looks
server?
fine, I plug in a USB,
No. it's just
doesn't pop
grabbing,
up. None of the USB devices pop up. I'm like,
Literally just.
what on earth? Because I remember a little pop-up coming up, and I'm like,
I got my.
So-
Ben, do we want to
We
kill
have
the
smart
stream?
group set up and everything and.
Whatever.
everything's there.
Do we want to kill the stream? I didn't know if any talk was going on about NDA stuff.
Not from aware of.
Just
Do we want to
10:14
talk about Indian stuff?
Yes,
I just heard some conversation
Yeah,
about ten
yes,
fourteen
I
five. That's all.
All right,
Kill it.
so we're gonna talk about Indian.
Oh, what about the Splunk stuff? Edit that out.
Thank you all for tuning in, when you are out there. We will catch you next time.
Happy birthday, Ben.